Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the next instalment of the Daily Palace podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host today, Alex Waite, and I'm joined by someone who I haven't seen for quite a while. It's Mr. Joe Lodge. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, mate. I'm pleased that our schedules have lined up. Nice to see you again after all this time. Yeah, having a good time. Drinking from a mug with my name on it, which I think is indicative of deteriorating mental state as we get into the winter. But yeah, pretty good.
Nice, mate. Yeah, like we were saying just before we came on air, I don't think Palace had won a game before when we last recorded. Also on your mug as well, Christmas season's coming up. So, if you fancy a new one with your name on, it's always a good time to put the feelers out.
Yeah, this year we're going to get John Philippe Mateta's name on it for sure.
Yeah, kicking the corner flag. I like it. That's good. Right, so today we're going to jump into some tactical thoughts about Oliver Glasner and the upcoming games that we've got over Christmas. We're going to look at the midfield options and some of the defence as well. It's actually been quietly going about their business. And then with a big clash coming up this weekend against Brighton, we're going to have a look back at some players to cross the rivalry lines in the Premier League of old. There are many and some good, funny, interesting ones that we're going to jump into later in the pod. So we're going to get started with the Palace midfield. Joe and Dan on yesterday's pod obviously discussed Will Hughes, who was the man of the match against Man City on Saturday. Deservedly so, put in an excellent performance in that 2-2 draw. But it does beg the question now, especially with Adam Wharton's return on the horizon. Who are the midfield two for Glasner now? Hughes has hardly put a foot wrong this season, especially recently. And then you've got Lerma and Dukore who are back. And then, Wharton could be back as well for Sunday. So, Joe, Glasner here has a bit of a selection dilemma. Who does he go with moving forward?
I think most likely he goes with Hughes and Wharton in the immediate future, / when Wharton is back to his absolute best, or fittest rather. I think you could see a temptation to leave Wharton out after the performance that Hughes put in, and the way that him and Lerma have played together in recent weeks. They're both very solid, really tenacious midfielders. They've got more bite between the pair of them than Hannibal Lecter at the dentist. I think they're really, really good combination in that sense of how shore the team up. But actually, sort of a bit paradoxically, I think Hughes played uncharacteristically well in terms of his progressive passing, spotting the balls forward, breaking the lines against City. And it was amazing that game, but it'd be a bit too early to say, suddenly he's added that to his game. I think maybe it was more of a one-off. You might prove me wrong. Actually, that highlights how valuable a player like Adam Wharton is to Palace and will be, particularly, I think, even more so now than he was at the back end of last season, because when Palace are playing in a way where they're sat quite deep and they're looking to hit teams quickly and directly on the counter, I think having someone who can spot those gaps, punch it between the lines, get the ball into the final third really, really quickly is so valuable and almost central tactically, really, for that attacking system to work. Hughes did it against City, and Wharton, I think, if you were to try and pick out one thing that's exceptional about his game, it is his ability to do that, to punch it between the lines, to pick his head up, to progress the ball quickly. So I think it's with this kind of Glasner's Palace 2.0, if that is what we're seeing, a bit more counter-attacking, a bit more reactive, Wharton could take it to another level if he can recapture the form of last season. And then I think Hughes and Lerma kind of go one or the other. Hughes has been a bit more, he's been fitter for longer, more consistent, and has a good relationship established from the end of last season with Wharton. They played well together, so I think that'll be his first choice once Wharton's really back up and running.
Yes, I think you're right. Like Wharton is, I think when he's back to fitness, he is the man to carry that midfield going, like especially in the attacking sense. But what about Dukore? Where do you think he fits in? Because obviously, I would say on paper, when you look at our central midfield options, you'd probably say Dukore and Wharton in terms of quality and potential when they're at their best would be the starting pair. But Dukore is like, since he's come back, been a bit iffy. He's had a long-term injury, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But against Ipswich, there were some rash tackles. He arguably could have been sent off for a double yellow. He got hooked at half-time because he was on a yellow. It looked like he was going to get a second one. So where do you think his kind of future lies in that midfield conundrum?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if come the end of the season, the midfield pair is Dukore and Wharton, and I think that's the one that makes most sense if Dukore manages to maintain his fitness. As you say, he's maybe the most talented kind of complete midfielder of the four, really. Wharton's obviously got some super strengths in terms of his passing, but Dukore had a level of tidiness that isn't matched by Lerma or Hughes. He's physically more imposing, he can cover more ground, and he's younger. He's 24. I think Palace will be really eager to get the best out of him because I mean him and Wharton could be a really exciting partnership going forward. But for the time being, I think probably Glasner won't want to sort of put two midfielders in there that he's not quite sure of the sharpness and fitness of. And as you say, Ducore's performances, particularly against Ipswich, have made us question that. And if he's going to throw one back in the deep end, I think based on what they can bring compared to the person I have already and for how the team's playing, Wharton's probably the one that stands to have a more transformative effect on Palace than Dukore. So I reckon we'll probably see Wharton come back in quite quickly and then an attempt made to ease Dukore back in. And I hope that attempt is made because I think Dukore is a really quality player. He's just, I don't see him going with a pair of them off the bat, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to take a while to bed, Dukore and Wharton, who have hardly played together. I'm not sure if they even have as a pair yet, but it will take time. And yeah, it's exciting though because we're getting all these players back, and the options are really exciting, especially with Brighton, Arsenal, another Arsenal, and then the Christmas fixtures coming up. We're going to need everyone back to fitness, and there'll be some rotation, I'm sure, over the Christmas period. So I'm sure we'll get to see all these combinations come to fruition. Right, stick with us after this quick ad break, and we'll be talking about the defence after this. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Daily Palace podcast. I'm Alex Waite and I'm joined by Joe Lodge today. So we're just talking about the midfield there, and we're gonna edge back into the defensive realms for part 2. So interestingly, just looking at the Premier League table as I do on a daily basis, I noticed that Palace had the second best defensive record in the bottom half of the table. Funnily enough, only beaten by Spurs, who are now 11th. They've only conceded 19, which I
Yeah,
actually
I'm
think,
amazed they have a better record than Palace, to be honest. Spurs.
it's bizarre. Like, I'm not surprised they're 11th. That doesn't shock me. But the fact they conceded 19 goals, I was like, oh my god. I thought they'd conceded well over 20. But yeah, another feat for us that I came across this week was that we've not conceded 2 or more goals in any game this season in all competitions, which is good going considering for some teams the goals have been flying in. Like Wolves have obviously got the worst defensive record, and then even some of the bigger teams like Man City are shipping goals left, right, and centre. So a lot of that has actually come, we think, from the kind of settled back five that Glasner's gone with. How important, Joe, do you think that back five, the central three and then the 2 wing backs, how important do you think that foundation will be as we try and climb up the table?
Yeah, I mean, I think massive. There are a couple of caveats or other factors to bear in mind. In that, I think part of Palace is really good compared to where they are on the table. Defensive records is reflective of Dean Henderson having an awesome season. To be fair, he's been saving some shots that he really shouldn't have. And also in recent weeks, there's been a big uptick. Limited Newcastle to 1 shot. City to only a few good chances and kept a clean sheet against Ipswich. That was really impressive. Definitely coincides with a move to a more conservative style from Glasner. So I think some of it is the midfield also being pushed back and encouraged to take less risks in pressing and this, that, and the other. But yeah, I think the back five is really important. On paper, I think we were saying from the start, the Kwa, Gahey, and Chalobah have a really nice mix of talents between them. They've got size, speed, agility, composure, aggression. They've got the makings of a really nice back three, and probably all they needed was a bit of time to develop that unspoken understanding of where they're going to be, when they're going to push up, how to limit the gaps between them, what each other's habits are. And I think that's developing, and yeah, we're seeing that, the fruits of that. I do think we won't necessarily see, or I don't necessarily want to see, the same back five absolutely every game. I think the Kwa and Gahey are probably shoo-ins for every start they're fit. Chalobah, the club probably have the least interest in developing, as he's only a loanee, and he's probably been the weakest of the 3 this season, I think. Not that he's not been good, but he's looked a bit error prone, sometimes a bit uncomfortable on the ball, which surprised me given the role he used to play for Tuchel's Chelsea. But I could see him getting rotated a little bit, just to get Richards and Riyadh some minutes and make a bit of room for them as the season progresses. And I really want to see Palace sign some people who can give Munoz and Mitchell a bit of support, because both of them, Munoz only after a busy summer, now looks like the player that we know he can be again. And yeah, Mitchell is always great for the first 70 minutes of the game, and then he's a passenger really after that, isn't he? I think bless him, he looks knackered by the end of everyone. So yeah, I think those two need a bit of help. But yeah, basically I think consistently playing together is part of what's improved Palace, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's sort of been the building blocks of our good run recently, of being hard to beat. That usually comes from a solid defensive line, and we're starting to see that now. Like, we always knew Gahey was a top player, but there's been some mistakes, and I think Glasner has reacted to that really well, and I think he deserves credit for sticking with those guys. He could have brought in old, reliable Joel Ward at some point if he wanted to, but he didn't. And
the back four, we were kind of advocating the back four at the time.
Yeah, we were, and he obviously trialled that in that friendly against Ipswich in the couple of international breaks ago. But yeah, he stuck with it, and fair play to him. But yeah, I totally agree with you of the wing backs. I mean, Jeffrey Schlupp could fill in at left wing back, but he is very much a stopgap. He's not a natural. And if we are, obviously we're going to stick with Glasner, barring a disaster. So we need to sign players in those positions who are naturals, like Munoz. Mitchell isn't by trade, but he has learnt that position and developed really well. But I do think, we do need more depth. Like, again, similar to the midfield, like we're got a big run of games coming up, and I could see Munoz playing every game. He's got that much energy, but he does deserve a break, and like he's in the last couple of games carried us through, which is great to see. Are there any other we've obviously got Chadi Riyadh coming back from injury as well. Do you think you're saying about Chalobah, perhaps us having the least interest in developing? Do you think over time Riyadh will maybe slot in for Chalobah?
I think it would require maybe a bit of rejigging, but yeah. I guess the only issue with Riyadh is that we kind of feel he was probably signed sort of with a view to future planning after Gahey goes. I think he's naturally left-sided, isn't he? That's the position that he would be playing. So if he went in for Chalobah, I could see it, but it'd probably be like something like the Kram moving to the right or Gahey moving to the right, or just playing him slightly out of position, which he might do. But yeah, I'd be interested to see it because we didn't get to see much of Riyadh before he got injured, and I think he's probably a pretty quality player. He looked really composed and intelligent in the preseason games that we saw him in. Has that, which we know is not every player from La Masia from Barcelona has that kind of intelligence and composure about them, as Adam Traore has been trying to disprove throughout his career. But Chadi Riyadh does seem to have that kind of game intelligence and maturity and stuff from just his time at Betis and a little bit we've seen of him. So he is a player that I think should be big for Palace in the future, as long as this doesn't spiral into a career-long injury crisis. And we'll see. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone like Chalobah missing a few games to accommodate him as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think just like with every position, there'll be some rotation. Like we can't stick with the same 11 every game, as much as like every team would love to do that. It's not possible. But it's exciting because again, it's another young player who's coming back who we've got high hopes for, and hopefully we'll see more of. It'd be great to see more of Chris Richards as well because he's sort of been quite reliable. But if we're winning and picking up points and drawing, like it's hard to change especially the back three. So kind of understand Glazner on that. Right, we're going to take a final break and then return for some behind enemy lines chat from the Premier League years gone by. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. Welcome back to part 3 of the Daily Palace podcast. I'm Alex Waite and I'm joined by Joe Lodge today. And we're going to conclude this podcast looking at some rivalries, some players who have crossed into rivalry lines in the Premier League. This is in honour of the upcoming game against Brighton on Sunday, which we'll talk more about in the upcoming episodes of the Daily Palace podcast over the next few days. I'm sure we'll touch on it a little bit and give you some kind of preview to the game. So, Joe, I want to ask you, who have you picked for your... you called it Judas Corner before we came on the pod. Who is your kind of Premier League Judas figure?
I'm non-baptized, so good person to throw to for Judas Corner. But I've got one person in general Premier League terms, and I've got a couple more which I'll wait for you to give yours. I've got a couple I want to ask your opinion about as a genuine Crystal Palace fan.
Okay.
But the one I find quite funny is Michael Owen, with the way it's worked out all round. As he so obviously he was Liverpool legends, left them to join Real Madrid, then went back to Newcastle instead after leaving Real Madrid, became a free agent after Newcastle got relegated, and ended up at United. The reasons I find him funny are, well, there's many reasons I find Michael Owen funny. The reasons I find this funny, that he found himself choosing between Everton and Man United, apparently for that free transfer, which is like choosing between keying the car or stealing the tyres of someone you broke up with yourself. I also think it's kind of funny that he doesn't seem to understand why he's not loved at Liverpool. He was kind of goes, "I was really sad and I had these amazing years there." And it's like, obviously he was an amazing player for Liverpool, but also he didn't. Most of his greatest achievements there were really personal achievements. I guess it was like Golden Boots, Ballon d'Ors, what have you, the Ballon d'Or being the standout one. And it seems like he's kind of going, I don't know why Liverpool fans don't love me. I won them the Ballon d'Or. It's like, no, you won yourself that, mate. It's not. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying he should have done more to make Liverpool win so major there, but I just think it's kind of the way that he doesn't really seem to fathom why he's not popular at Anfield. Makes me laugh. So yeah, Michael Owen.
There's lots of things about Michael Owen that they just leave you with like this quandary of like, who is he? Like, was he a footballer? Because there's these
watch films.
Yeah, like I literally like these things come up. Like he doesn't drink tea apparently. Like he's never watched a film in his life, and it's like, but he seems to like think that that's normal, and everyone else shouldn't watch films like the way he describes it. It's like. The guy is bizarre, man.
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah, when he was explaining that using the hashtag hate films, which really made me laugh.
I mean, that's never gonna pick up, is it? Like,
no one else shares that opinion.
Yeah, and the other one was that who was the goalkeeper who did that video with where he's smashing shots past that.
Is it Neville Southall that? I think.
Yeah, and Southall has to say to him, "It's like he's only 13," and it's just like the guy. If he wasn't good at football, he'd probably be a conspiracy theorist.
It was an omen, that wasn't it? He was at the Britannia, which was where it all sadly ended for him, failing to score past 25-year-old goalkeepers.
yeah, he's no longer the bully anymore.
He's
he's an interesting character. We could probably do a whole pod on him, but yeah, it's probably not worth it. Not worth giving him the time of day anymore. Mine is actually speaking of Man United. I haven't gone for the obvious one here, but it's Peter Schmeichel joining Man City, which again, like you could kind of understand it. Like City weren't great then, and Schmeichel was at the end of his career after an illustrious time at Old Trafford. But the reason I chose it is just because it jumped to my mind where he goes to shake Gary Neville's hand before the Manchester derby. Pats Neville on the shoulder and he's like, "Oh, you're right, mate." Sticks a hand out. Neville realizes who it is. He's like, "Oh no, job on. Like, just go out, mate. Leave me alone." And I was like, "Oh, that's quality. I love it." I don't like much about Gary Neville, but
yes, I always find it sort of surprising. I kind of, because of Gary Neville the pundit, you forget that Gary Neville the player was actually like maybe not hard, but quite aggressive and kind of
passionate. Very passionate about Man United. And
it still is that.
Yeah, but it's like if you're gonna mug someone off, I don't think I'd mug off Peter Schmeichel. Like I'd just do the handshake and be like, "All right, fair enough, mate."
He'd gone.
Yeah, like the size of his hands, he'd just sort of brush Gary Neville aside and just knock him over. But yeah, obviously the other one that is massive as a Palace fan is the Glenn Murray Palace and Brighton link. There's obviously the infamous thing for Palace fans where I can't repeat what the Brighton fan said when Murray scored against them, but it's sort of iconic amongst Palace fans. But that's a close second for me. Have you got any others that spring to mind, Joe?
Well, I mean, Glenn Murray was one I was going to ask about because I wasn't quite sure what the perception of him was, whether it was kind of that he was a Judas from Palace point of view, or if it was that he'd kind of maybe not had the chance he deserved for Palace in the Prem and having fired them up from the Championship and kind of, I don't know, I always thought he was a funny figure, Glenn Murray, purely because I had a history teacher who was a Palace fan from Oldham, bizarrely.
Interesting link.
When I was in year 8, he told me I should stop idolising Van Persie and watch Glenn Murray in the Championship and see a proper striker.
Like, grow up, Joe. Go watch some Championship football.
I also like that he's got the most. I'd say his name is the most like what Lidl would call a whiskey of any player in Premier League history.
A knockoff Glenfiddich. Glenn Murray.
Nice. But yeah, that's basically what I wanted to ask about was how much antipathy is there for Glenn Murray from a Palace point of view.
He's Palace fans love him. He did so much for us when we were rubbish. He was an absolute unit of a goal scorer. I actually in the promotion season went to pretty much every home game. Didn't have a season ticket, so it probably cost me a lot more money just showing up every week. But just watching Glenn Murray, like his movement for a fairly big centre forward was just incredible, really intelligent. And for a corner, everyone would sort of be like jostling around, and he'd just do like a little shoulder shimmy or lose his marker, and he's so clever. He scored some great goals as well. It was just a shame because he did his ACL in the playoff game against Brighton at home, and obviously it was proper noisy and very vociferous in the ground that day. But as soon as he went down, the ground just went silent because we were like, "Oh my god, we've got Aaron Wilbraham on the bench and we've lost Glenn Murray." Like
that's a blast for the first.
We were worried, man. We were worried, but it was a shame how it ended for Murray at Palace because he could have been great if he came up with us and wasn't injured. But I think Palace fans love him for what he did at a time when we were terrible. So fair play, Glenn Murray. We love you. Right, that's been the Daily Palace podcast for today. As always, give us 5 stars if you can, if you've listened all the way through. Because it will really help with us getting noticed, and tune in for the rest of the week when we'll be looking ahead to the weekend's action. I just want to say a big thank you to Joe Lodge for joining me today. Thanks, mate.
Thank you for having me, Alex. Pleasure.
Cheers, mate, and we'll catch you again tomorrow.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.